Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 89b, top of the page, with the words Lechshori Gavrila Komi Boilam. The Gemara refutes this proof. We did not raise the difficulty with regard to the fitness of the man himself to eat, as it is obvious that one may act in advance, so that he will be able to eat a great deal. When this dilemma was raised to us, it was with regard to the fitness of the produce for eating. May they be prepared by singeing? Singeing? I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what you're trying to say here. What then is the halakha? The Gemara offers another suggestion. Come in here, a proof from a braita. Laborers may eat grapes at the end of their rows of vines, provided that they do not singe. Singeing them in fire. Provided they do not singe them in fire. Okay, the Gemara rejects this claim. This affords no proof, as the prohibition there is not because of his use of the fire, but due to his neglect of his labor, as he has no right to busy himself with other matters during his work time. When the dilemma is raised to us is with regard to a case where he does not have to stop to work. For example, when he has his wife and children with him who can singe the fruit for him without him having to pause in his labor. What is the halacha in this kind of case? In a case of this kind. The Gemara again suggests, coming to here, a proof from a braita. A laborer may not singe produce in fire and eat, and he may not heat produce in the ground and eat, and he may not break produce on rocks and eat, but he may break it a little. He may break it little by little and eat. Once again, the Gemara refutes this proof. There too, the reason is due to his neglect of his labor. The Gemara comments, so too, it is reasonable that this is the case, as if it enters your mind that it is prohibited due to his sweetening of the produce, what sweetening of the produce is there in his use of a rock? The Gemara responds, this is not a conclusive argument, as it is impossible that the produce would not be sweetened a little. The Gemara further suggests, come and hear a proof from a braita. With regard to laborers who are plucking figs, or plucking dates, or harvesting grapes, or harvesting olives, they may eat, and they are exempt from separating tithes, as the Torah entitled them to eat. Nevertheless, they may not eat these fruits together with their bread, unless they receive permission from the homeowner. Similarly, one may not dip these fruits in salt and eat. This indicates that it is prohibited to sweeten the fruit. The Gemara rejects this proof as well. Salt is certainly considered like grapes and something else, as one is adding an ingredient which is undoubtedly prohibited. By contrast, one who singes produce in fire has not added anything, and therefore it is possible that this practice is permitted. Consequently, the Gemara's question is left unresolved. What's interesting is that you have an unresolved question, but it's not a teku. This is interesting as well. An unresolved question that's not a teku. It's a non-teku. Does this tie into the equation of the tekus? In other words, there's a specific number of tekus in the Talmud Bavli, 317 to be exact. But although tekus are unresolved questions, there are other unresolved questions that are not labeled as teku. How does that affect the whole balance of the questions that are called teku and are non-teku with regard to number and with regard to the deeper meaning when one would understand all the tekus? And to this I say teku. I don't have an answer, but something to think about. Maybe I might also teku, and it's called lo teku. It's not a teku, but it is an unresolved question. It's called lo teku. How about that? Call it teku or lo teku? Lo teku? Lo teku. Lo teku. Lo teku. Lo teku. Lo teku. I don't know, something, what should we call it? What should we call it? It's, lo teku. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, okay. Okay, the Braita mentioned earlier taught, and he may not dip these fruits in salt and eat. And the Gemara raises a contradiction to this from a Braita. In the case of one who hires a laborer to till and dig a circle under olives, this one may not eat from the olives. But if you hired him to harvest grapes, or hired him to harvest olives, or hired him to gather any other fruit, this one may eat, and he is exempt from separating tithes, as the Torah entitled these laborers to eat, in a case where he stipulated with the owner beforehand that he may eat even when he is not entitled to do so by Torah law. If he eats the fruit one by one, he may eat without separating tithes, but if he consumes two by two, he may not eat without separating tithes. And he may dip those fruits in salt and eat. The Gemara analyzes this last statement. To which section of the Braita is this referring? If we say that it is referring to the latter clause in which a laborer has an agreement with the owner, it is superfluous, since the laborer stipulated he may eat in any manner he wishes, he may certainly eat with salt. Rather, it is not referring to the first clause of the Braita. Concerning a laborer who eats by Torah law, this would prove the laborer may dip fruit in salt without separating tithes. Abaye said this is not difficult, as here it is prohibited because he is in Eretz Yisrael, whereas there he is outside of Eretz Yisrael. The reason for the difference is as follows. In Eretz Yisrael, dipping fruit in salt establishes his consumption as a fixed meal, which renders the fruit subject to tithes. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, by contrast, dipping fruit in salt does not establish his consumption as a meal, as the mitzvah of tithes does not apply outside of Eretz Yisrael by Torah law. Rava said, Is there any produce with regard to which the halacha is that in Eretz Yisrael dipping establishes it as a meal by Torah law, and yet outside Eretz Yisrael dipping does not establish it as a meal? And is it even permitted ab initio, which means l'chatchila? It cannot be that there is such a great difference between these places as the enactments of the sages are modeled on Torah law. Rather, Rava rejected Abaye's answer and stated a different resolution. Whether in Eretz Yisrael or outside of Eretz Yisrael, if you ate one fruit, its dipping in salt does not establish it as anything more than a casual meal. But if he ate two, dipping in salt does establish it as a meal. Therefore, in a case where he stipulated that he may eat, whether he dipped in salt or he did not dip in salt, he may eat one by one, but he may not eat 2 by 2. If he did not stipulate, and did not dip in salt, he may eat 2 by 2. If he dips in salt, he may eat 1 by 1, but he may not eat 2 by 2, even though he received permission to eat 2 at a time from the homeowner. The reason is that they have already been rendered untithed produce with regard to tithes, because the dipping established them as ready for tithing. Consequently, the laborer may not partake of them until he has separated tithes. The Gemara asks, and from where do we derive this halakha that, with regard to eating fruit 2 at a time, dipping in salt establishes that they are subject to tithes? Rav Matana said that it is as the verse states, for he has gathered them as the sheaves to the threshing floor. Micah 4:12. This ki kipsam ki amir gorna. Micah 4:12, which is the area code of somewhere in Pennsylvania. 412. Pittsburgh? Yeah, like Pittsburgh area. Does Michael live in Pittsburgh? Probably at least a few. This verse shows that one who gathers them together, an act that involves at least 2 items, is considered to have brought them into his granary. Consequently, if he also dips them in salt, he has established his consumption as a fixed meal, which means that he must separate tithes. Ki kipsam ki amir gorna. In Apash, that equals 781. Gorna. Tithes. Ten Rabbanan. The sages taught, in the case of cows that tread on produce, for which the work has been completed, but which is threshed again in this manner as a part of its preparation into food,